Hey everyone, and welcome back to another Warcraft video. So, patch 7.3.5 is revamping the leveling of the game, and with that, one of the questions I've been asked the most is what the best zones in the game are. You know, so many of us have either rushed through the leveling content, we've, done dungeons and skipped it, we've boosted, or maybe we're new to save the Horde for the first time. So, this video is going to lay out what the best zones are for each faction, and this is mainly in terms of the storyline, so I am going to be keeping it spoiler-free, but we will talk about broad themes. Now, the new level scaling means that you are a lot more free to do things in whatever order you want, so doing level 50 to 60 in Darkshore, well, that's entirely reasonable now. So we're going to kick today's video off with the best 10 through 60 Horde leveling zones. Of course, I say 10 through 60 because do remember that the starting zones still are level 1 through 10, though I will mention them a bit later. Now, the Silver Pine Forest is one of the best Cataclysm zones in the game. It might actually be the best. I would recommend playing this after you go through the Worgen starting zone on another character, as they kind of tie in with each other. Now, Sylvanas is one of the major players in Battle for Azeroth, and few zones focus on her as much as Silver Pine Forest does. It tells the story of the Alliance and Horde's war over Lordaeron, which of course is something that we will see again in Battle for Azeroth. This zone, just consistently, it's got really strong character moments, great storytelling, it's just one of the best and you've got to play it. Next, Hillsbrute Foothills. Well, if you've just been in Silverpine, it makes a lot of sense to keep on going to here. It's got a lot of those Forsaken themes, a few very memorable quest lines, including some with some pretty cool mechanics. And then also the Stone Talon Mountains. This is a must-play for the Horde characters. The story is great, especially if you're interested in Garrosh, and particularly if you don't like how he went in Mists of Pandaria. Story-wise, it's one you can't miss, and I will say no more. Next, Ashara is a unique one to the Horde. It's quite fun. It's got pretty, different tone and mechanics, because of course you're dealing with the goblins. If you like goblin stuff, it's definitely a great one to check out. Now, I am going to move on to the Alliance, but there's a lot of zones which are great for both factions, so yeah, don't worry, it's not a sparse one. So Alliance 10 through 60 standouts. Westfall gets in here easily. It's an example of a zone that has a really good story that's, it's actually told oddly well for the for World of Warcraft standards anyway. Of course, if you've been to the original Westfall, you'll get a lot out of it. Pacing-wise, it's a bit in the short side, but it's condensed and focused, and it's great fun while you're there. Plus, generally, I just kind of love the vibe of this place, and I'll admit there's a fair bit of nostalgia. Redridge, then, is your natural progression on from Westfall, and again, it's an excellent zone in its own right. It's got its questline's one of the more tightly focused ones that you'll see. It focuses on a slowly expanding cast of characters as they face off against a looming threat. The story's great, the quest mechanics are often really fun, and there are some really nice moments. It's a bit of a standout for Warcraft, actually. Redridge and Westfall for Alliance players are really just, you've got to do them. Next, Darkshore. It's wonderful. First, they've nailed the visuals, which of course are paired with great ambient sounds and music to really sell the sort of bleak atmosphere. The core story is one that's great. It investigates a lot of Cataclysm stuff, some Old God stuff, and a little bit of Alliance versus Horde thrown in. Now, there are my standouts that are faction-specific, but there's a lot of great stuff for both. So the Western Plaguelands is a great place for both Alliance and Horde characters. The story focuses in on the struggle for the control of the town of Anderhall, which is something that many people will recognize from Warcraft 3. Alliance and Horde players actually see different sides of a very similar story, so this is, it's a great one for players to go through on either faction. Next, the Eastern Plaguelands is another really, really good one. It's got a storyline that progresses as you move through the zone with the caravan, and again, an expanding cast of characters. It's pretty damn well done. The just general atmosphere of the zone is great. There's a few standout moments, good quest characters, stuff like that. It's a good one to stop by with after you're done with Western Plaguelands. Next, the Badlands. Well, they're known for two things. First, Rathian is involved. I'll say no more, but there's a great quest line that I think a lot of people will find interesting. And the other thing it's known for is a few gimmick quests, which, they're not really for me, but I think a lot of people do really love them, and they're probably worth checking out for that. Next, Stranglethorn Vale easily makes the list for me. Cataclysm did a great job of creating engaging storylines and good quest lines out of the broad themes of what were there in the original version of the zone. Its general atmosphere is great, and it feels really unique in the game. It's actually quite nice in terms of how it breaks mix up your gameplay after playing through the other zones. Next, the Southern Barrens. This is one that I would definitely break out for those who want more of the Alliance versus Horde war. I think it's especially recommended for Horde players who have just finished Stone Talon Mountains, and for Alliance players, it's worth doing if you're around that area. It's not a very long zone, but it does have some pretty great questing if you want to fight the opposite faction. So that's the best highlights, but let's talk about some of the other zones. For the most part, the other zones, none of them really have terrible questing. They just don't have some sort of quests and storylines that stand out as much. Many of them have a really cool theme though, so honestly I would just go to whatever zone interests you the most. So while Felwood isn't really a top tier pick, I think it's still really good, especially if you like the theme. Duskwood is a great example here. It is a zone with middling quests, but it makes up for it with really strong atmosphere and art direction, so it is one I probably would recommend stopping by with at some point. Ashenvale is one that also gets in for the same reason. It's a natural follow-on from Darkshore, and it's kind of iconic to many people. It's a pretty immersive place, I suppose, and it's definitely somewhere that a lot of people are quite nostalgic about from vanilla. And yeah, if you're a player who likes those forest, corruption-ish, night elf themes mixed with some of the Alliance vs Horde war, it definitely is a great one to check out. Now, I haven't been there in quite a while, but Ungoro Crater does have some oddly good quality quests to it. Honestly, for me, the only zone that's been a disappointment so far has been Desolus. Its questing, yeah, it was just kind of boring for me. Then, just in terms of stuff off the top of my head, Feralus is a zone which, its questing, it was okay. I really love the look and feel of the zone, but I don't feel like I can just recommend wholesale people go there. Thousand Needles is one of the zones that was touched most by the Cataclysm, and it doesn't get on my top list for, I think, yeah, both can do it, but it is quite good. So again, if you're around that area, I'd say Thousand Needles is a pretty good one. You've got a bit of a story going on with the Tauren, and then, of course, an update to what's been going on at the Goblin Speedway now that the whole place has been flooded. Now, it's funny doing a video like this. There's iconic zones like Tanaris, or Elwyn Forest, or Dunmoreau, or the Wetlands, which, for me, the questing just isn't good enough to really get into a big list like this. But again, if there's zones which you've got nostalgia for, or zones which have a theme or a visual that you really like, then yeah, you probably should go and see them. I mean, we've got 9 months, and, well, it's the World of Warcraft. It's probably worth just seeing what places are actually like. Now, I did want to mention starter zones. Gilneas definitely gets a shout out for doing the whole, linear story thing actually quite well, as does the first 5 levels of being a troll. Then Tirisfal Glade is also great, especially since it leads into the Horde story at Silverpine Forest, so that's definitely a good one. Now, Elwyn, Dunmoreau, and Durotar, honestly, they're kind of boring. Teldrassil is pretty good, and it's probably of interest given what's going to be happening to it in Battle for Azeroth, so I recommend, going through that. Another thing that I would recommend doing is, if you're not a Wrath Baby and you haven't done this, create a new Death Knight and head straight to Northrend at level 58. You'll be able to do that now, and I think it will be a pretty great sort of cohesive experience and just a great way to do Northrend. Now, on a similar topic, let's talk about level 58 through 80. So 58 through 80 can either be done in Outland or Northrend. I'd recommend doing Northrend. Yeah, the ideal leveling path for story. It's probably start off in the Howling Fjord. It's probably my favourite zone of the game overall. It's a great mix of story and atmosphere. After that, head over to Dragonblight. It's got some excellent storylines, even though, sadly, the Battle for the Undercity was something that has been cut from the game. It's a must-play, though. Now, the Borean Tundra, it's not that great, though the first few quests and the questline with Thessarian, at least for the Alliance, they're quite decent. Anyway, after Dragonblight, I would go to Grizzly Hills for some of the best atmosphere, just lovely place in the game, then Sholazar Basin, I do that, and then I do both Icecrown and Storm Peaks. For me, Northrend is pretty much the best continent overall as a cohesive unit that they've ever made, and, when you take the time of release into account anyway, especially in terms of the art and the music, it's large enough that it feels like a really expansive place, more so than the Broken Shore. So yeah, I think you should go there, and Northrend should take you through that whole level bracket. Now, let's talk about 80 through 90. I would recommend actually just doing Hyjal, then Vashir. I like both of these zones quite a lot, and for me, Vashir's underwater gameplay wasn't really a problem. After that, you could probably skip Deepholm and move straight on to Uldum, and then Twilight Highlands. Now, for the mop stuff, I would mainly just go through Jade Forest because it starts off quite strong. And this actually should be enough to get you through most leveling bracket if, my sort of napkin math is right. Past that, it's then just a matter of you doing Warlords of Draenor and Legion, and you don't really have much choice in how you do those, so yeah, fire away. But there you go, that is a whole bunch of excellent zones. Hopefully some of them are ones you haven't played, so you can, go and enjoy them with the new leveling system. Definitely, I'd say if you've been stuck in one faction, it's a good time to try out another one, especially since there's going to be a whole bunch of, I assume, faction-exclusive content in Battle for Azeroth. So one thing I would recommend doing is, if you're an Alliance player, go through the Horde stuff, see what's up in Stone Talon, and especially with Silverpine and Hillsborough. They're really great stuff. Start a character of the opposite faction then when Battle for Azeroth comes out. There's probably going to be a bunch of faction-unique content that you'll be able to enjoy, so it's probably worth doing that now. But there you go, that is my top leveling picks for World of Warcraft. If you want another leveling-related video, I do have one coming that is on a sort of an ultimate UI for immersion, which I think will be, pretty interesting if this is a video that was up your alley. But that's it for me. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.